This is my migrant story. My name is Basilio, a son of a Mayan and a Canjobal indígena. I had once a beautiful life. That was when I was a baby. I grew up seeing my father work each day to bring bread to our table. It was normal. That was life for my people. One day some people came to our town looking for gold. They destroyed the land and the food didn't grow up as normal. My people fight to protect their land, but the government took them as criminals. I was like 7 or 8 years old, and I learned about corruption. I couldn't live there any longer. My family took a decision that will change our lives. We decided to immigrate. They called USA as a second haven. They told me and my brothers that we would have a beautiful life there. And so we traveled. We went to the house of a man known as the Coyote. He will guide us in our way to the second haven. I thought that crossing a country that speaks Spanish would be fun, but it wasn't. Mexico was such a beautiful country, but I had the bad luck to meet bad people. When we were about to enter to the USA, the Coyote left us in our own. He did not tell us where to go. We slept in the house of a woman who gave us posada.
Treading the path of uncertainty with faith and fortitude guiding each footstep, people from all walks of life have migrated to the United States with the expectation that her promise of liberty will welcome them with open arms. Leaving homes, families, and familiarity behind, they travel through hell and high water, undeterred by the barbed wire and border patrol guarding these stolen lands. They bring very few possessions, but arrive with an abundance of hope. Hope that the U.S. will offer sanctuary from political persecution, war, and starvation, that better opportunities await, and that their children will be safer, stronger, and supported in the land of the free. They remain brave, even when bigoted leaders shout, "This is not your home." For all their troubles and painstaking travels, they are either detained and denied basic human rights or thrust into the center of a brutal debate and painted as delinquents, drug lords, and undocumented animals. Demonized by domestic enemy rhetoric, unauthorized migrants or immigrants who have come to this country seeking shelter are facing the threat of deportation and arrest in one of the most shameful chapters in recent history. While this deeply troubling moment in time will be remembered as a stain on our nation's conscience, people are taking a stand and showing up in solidarity for communities that deserve more than just sympathy. I wrote these words in an article titled "Invisible Borders and the Walls That Divide," and I think it's important to share some of the conversations that shaped that article. So this episode of Spectrum Talk with Ruby features talks with the founder and president of the African Leadership Group, Mr. Papa Dia, the collaborative reporting project manager of the Colorado News Collaborative, Ms. Stephanie Rivera, and Colorado State Representative Junie Joseph. Each of them are working to improve conditions for Colorado communities, and each has a unique perspective on the immigration crisis that has separated families, terrorized communities, and revoked access to basic human rights. Thank you for listening, and I hope you're moved by what they have to say. I would love to hear your perspective on what's going on with the crisis involving immigration. I know that it's an ongoing crisis, of course, but here recently, there's been a lot of attention on immigration from the southern border, perhaps without as much attention to African immigration as there probably should be. So how is the community feeling?
Obviously, as you know, we've been dealing this for the last couple of years. Now, one thing to know about the community and the work we do, first and foremost, I echo what you said. When people talk about immigration, they have the tendency to focus when it comes to resources, when it comes to help, just to the Latino and people that came from South America. And people have a tendency to forget that we have Africans that goes through the same process and the same struggle, and nobody talk about us as African immigrants. So the African Leadership Group, we have became, without asking for it, an entry point for most of these migrants. Now, when we talk about immigration for the African immigrant community, so there are three categories. There are the categories of people like me that came through the airport, have visa, and We came and we established here, and we are here regularly and with all our paperwork and things like that. But also, we also have a category of people that came here with a visa and overstay their visa. And what it means for those people, it means they are here, but they don't have the paperwork to work. They don't have a driver's license. They cannot have access to anything that will make them a normal, regular citizen. But they are here, right? And you have also the refugees, because they apply to be a refugee for whatever goes through the country. It could be a civil war, it could be persecution. And there's people that come here as a refugee, they go through the process and they automatically enroll in all the benefit that the country offers, right? Section 8 housing, food access, you name it. They have access to all those benefits that the country offers. And most recently, we have the case of people that goes through the border, okay, that came through Mexico, Nicaragua, and enter the United States. We serve over 1,000 of those migrants. Now, keep in mind also, those people did not come from one African nation. So you have people from Senegal, you have people from Burkina Faso, from Mali, from Togo, from Ethiopia, from Eritrea, from Sudan. So they all came through this border. Now, most of these people, they have heard about the African Leadership Group before even they get here because of the service that we provide. So most of them, they set their mind into, we know that when we go to Colorado, there's an organization called the African League. So all of a sudden, about 2 years ago, we started having people knocking on our door, right? And this is something that we were not ready for. This is something that we don't have any budget finance to provide these people. But organization, our view is, for me, and this is my belief, there's something we call human right. And what human right means, every human being should have the right to have access to food, should have access to water, should have access to clothing, should have access to health care, no matter what their status is. Right? This is the human dignity. So in our case, as an organization that serve as an entry point because of the language barrier, the culture, because they know when they come here, because they don't speak English, but they will find somebody. So people start coming. So we start providing food to this migrant. We start providing clothing. We organize health fair to help these people. And we start providing legal advice because we have lawyers that work with us. We have a legal clinic committee. So we have helped all these people file their asylum cases. And as you know, you file your asylum cases after 150 days, you qualify to apply for a work permit, so they get the work permit. So we have helped and organized. So that took us a lot of time. But Ruby, keep in mind, I am doing all this work without funding. right? And now these people, okay, they are so-called expected to live in this country. What is the next need? The next need, okay, how do I get a job? But in order to be able to get a job, yes, you have a work permit, but you have to be able to speak English. So we start providing English classes, right? So we start providing computer classes. We start providing live training, how to conduct an interview, and everything been going well. So well, no major issue, but people were okay, no fear, and they're going through the due process, right? Until, was it January 6th, January 20th, then the new administration came, everything changed. Everything changed. All of a sudden, there's fear in the community. Fear people would not leave their house. People left their job. And what we thought were just ideas became reality on a Wednesday in January or February when we have that big ICE raids in Denver. Okay? So we had a lot of our community that were arrested by ICE. Okay? Now, and as much we've done a lot of training, know your right, but some of them, immigration come, knock on their door, they open, they get arrested. So,
Wow.
that was brutal. A lot of them were detained. Now, all of a sudden, we are in the, okay, let's find a lawyer. As you know, lawyers is expensive. So we went through that. Now, the fear get even deeper in the community, right? Deeper in the community. Even ourselves, at some point, we are considering about closing because we were worried that we'll be a target. We are a known organization that work with immigrant and help migrant. And yes, immigration know who we are and where we are. At some point, we suspended all the service we were providing we suspended the English class, we suspended the computer class. And as a leader, I told myself, wait a minute, what am I doing? Because by doing this, I am installing this fear more on these people. And I said, we cannot do that. We cannot do that. So we reopen, re-engage, continue our activity. But where we were seeing about 50 people, it decreased to 5 to 10 people because people were still scared to come. So now, and all of a sudden, people that went through the due process of applying and getting, now they're seeing their green card being revoked. So a lot of these things are changing. So with all these things that I share with you starting 2 years ago to where we're now, a lot of fear in the community. We don't know who's safe. We don't know where you can be safe. But the scary thing is we don't even know what is the law? What is? So you have judge that tell you, okay, you can stay in this country legally, but yet you have ICE that's arresting you and deporting you. What world do we live in? What country do we live in? What nation of law are we in? And even myself, as a citizen of this country, in some cases, I was reminded that it doesn't mean nothing. I can still be deported. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, yes. Because, look, because we have state elected official being murdered in their own home.
Right.
Who am I to believe that, oh, I am safe?
Right.
Who am I?
Yeah.
Who am I?
Yeah, I hear you. I have been following those instances of people who are citizens and without the opportunity to prove their status or anything, they are being detained. And then it's hard for the public to know what's happening next or where people are even going. So, wow. How do you live with that ongoing concern of being monitored?
Look, it depends on who you talk to, but talking about myself, right? I am called to serve my community. This is not something that I choose to do, but this is something I am called upon doing. And I have to detach myself from my personal feeling and emotion to this big calling that I have, right? It's a calling. So I have to be here for my community, and I'll always be here for my community. Always. Always. It's clear. My responsibility is to provide and protect my community as much I can. In that process, I advise and recommend to abide by the law, but everybody also to protect the right they have as an asylum seeker, as an immigrant, and as a human being. Because even as human being, overstaying in this country, we still have rights. We still have rights. So it's not an easy task. Times you are exhausted, times you are worried. But I am so grateful that we build a community not just of African immigrants, but of people. We have a lot of black people that are very involved in the organization, supporting and helping the work. We have other nationalities and race that are very involved in the organization, providing help. So to answer your question, yes, there's this calling, but there's this, as a human being, yes, you know, you're a human being. You are concerned. You have people calling you at 2 in the morning, at 3 in the morning. You have to be there because it's pretty much a life and death situation. Like if ICE is knocking on your door at 2 in the morning and the only organization that you know and you hope that can help is the African Leadership Group, you will call at that time. So I'm in a situation where I can't turn off my phone. I have to answer every call because you never know what's going on. But God is giving me the strength to serve and be here for the community, and I'm grateful. But it's challenging. But what is not challenging nowadays? We all have different challenges we face, and I embrace it fully.
How can the community, the larger Denver community, assist your organization at this time?
Ruby, that's a $1 million question. Let me tell you, we know currently there is a propaganda that's intentionally doing whatever it takes to divide us. Fact, divide us. When migrants are being painted to be all the problems that you could have in your personal life. They're gangsters, they're drug dealers, they are rapists. It's a propaganda to turn you as a person against migrant without taking the time to know the inside of this person. So for me, before we even talk about coming together, let's talk about who we should be as a human being and how do we process information. How do we process the way that migrants are being portrayed in our community? I think that's the biggest challenge that we are facing right now. And what do I need to understand about migrants? I am an immigrant, and I'm here leading an organization, not only changing the life of migrants, but changing the life of people from the broader community. This is what we do. So for me, I think we need, first and foremost, and educate ourselves. And starting with yourself, let me pause and really ask myself, how should I process the information that's being portrayed about people? Because I think nowadays we live in a society where, for the longest time, we could say in America, people were judged by the color of their skin, right? But now, not only the color of their skin, but it's more like how you label. Because I can be black. Not only people are going to judge me as the character of my skin, but now, on top of that, they will add the fact that, oh, he's labeled as a migrant. Not only he's black, but he's a migrant. So it adds up. So I think as a community, and this is one thing that the African Leadership Group does, we have initiated a project or an initiative called Breaking Barriers and Building Bridges among all people. And you know this, and we did that with the African immigrant and the black community. We did that with the African immigrant community and the Jewish community. We just hosted a conversation last week where I brought a leader from the black community and leader from the Jewish community. Because as you know, with everything, so for me, intentionally, every day that I wake up, I'm fighting the fact that I'm not going to let the news portray you, Ruby, as this person, but I will create the opportunity that I get to know you as a human being. So I think if there's a calling or my ask to the broader community, please get to know those people that are labeled as a migrant. So let's get to know each other before we can talk about coming together. For me, that's just what I'll ask. Please get to know, sit down and ask people stories, because we all have stories. We all do. Let's go back to focusing on being the core of who we can as human being first. For me, that's my ask. It doesn't matter what people look like, where they come from, but we all are human beings. The last time I checked, they all bleed blood, and it's all red.
Also been keeping an eye on what Colorado Media Project has been doing in collab and the immigration, what would you call it? Not immigration project, but
we see as an extension to the Citizens Agenda project that we did last year, Voter Voices in 2024. We saw that immigration was one of the top issues that the more than 7,000 Coloradans that we surveyed let us know was top of mind for them. And given how the Trump administration really started right off the bat with a lot of policies and executive orders regarding immigration, we thought this would be a good focus to expand on that and really kind of focusing on the community concerns. And, obviously what happens at the executive level has ripple effects all the way down to the local level, as we've been seeing. So it's not so much focused on Trump, though that administration does kind of set the tone in a lot of ways, but it's also the responses at the local, state level. And so this project is reminding newsrooms all of this information that we found out from their readers, from the community, and helping them be prepared to respond in their journalism to many of the questions that their community may have. And we also know that not every newsroom has an immigration reporter or someone who really understands this issue too. So we're also providing that service, which is very much a Colorado News Collaborative type of service as well.
One of the things that I've been seeing is the preliminary effort, which was asking newsrooms to contact sheriff departments that may have a close relationship with their reporting. So I did notice that some of the sheriff's departments that are located in the rural areas were a little bit slower to respond, either that or there weren't as many newsrooms on hand covering those areas. So with all the protests that have erupted with those sheriff's departments, did they provide feedback about how they're going to handle issues like what's happening right now? Or were those just general immigration policies, and were you just trying to source information about how they respond on just a regular day?
Yeah, so it is very specific to non-citizen detainees and how, we know what the Colorado state law is, but we do have instances, for example, in Teller County, where the sheriff there has said that its deputies have been deputized to carry out some immigration enforcement on behalf of ICE. So we're trying to understand if there's other sheriff's departments who have similar policies or initiatives in place in that way, which is why we can ask all the police departments, university police, all of that, but we're really focusing on the sheriff's department and offices. And we have 4 simple questions for the most part. We expect standard responses, pointing to this, and we've been seeing this in some of the responses that newsrooms have been getting, citing state law, like we're not allowed to do this, blah, blah, blah. But you're right, like rural is the hardest part right now. And we understand that newsrooms are a bit overwhelmed. And that's why we're targeting newsrooms where, if there's a rural newsroom somewhere, like, hey, you may have a relationship with the sheriff. Can you go ahead and ask them these questions? So it's a lot of kind of communicating what the project is, working with the newsrooms and showcasing and letting them know what the benefit they'll see from doing something big that may be outside of their wheelhouse. But if they can see the bigger picture, and I think that's what part of this project is, like, here's all the tools and resources you'll need. But at the same time, by you just emailing them, picking up a phone, asking them these 4 questions, here's how you contribute to the bigger picture as well. So there's a lot of that going on in the background now, but we are excited about what kind of information we're going to find from this. And it's really a way for us to be proactive, because this can happen anywhere. This can happen in Weld County, in San Luis Valley, anywhere where there's workers, that can be a possibility. And I think that's why it's so much more important to find out how rural communities are going to be responding, rural sheriff's deputies, because you don't get those answers right away. And I'd rather be prepared now.
So when it comes to what we can do to really support our audiences at this time, what do you think is the best approach?
Yeah, I say first find out who is your audience. I think that's the most important question any newsroom should be asking themselves. Find out what is your mission and who is that audience to help in that mission of really educating and providing information. Once you know who that audience is, it's listening to them. And it's an active listening and a consistent listening. It's not just holding one forum once and then forgetting about them. I think that's a really big issue that newsrooms and journalists forget. And I think that kind of plays into that mistrust that people feel like you're just extracting information and forgetting about them. That's why, within my role with CPR is audience engagement. And I would say that really encompasses also community engagement. And I've done those kind of projects. And I did that with Voter Voices, where it's really making sure that we're going out there in person or online, however it is, meeting them where they're at. I think it's the key part in that as well. So I would say listening is going to be the most important part, and then making sure that you're taking into account the nuanced opinions and conversations, because we know that community of colors aren't a monolith, right? There's so many different opinions and their experiences that make that up. So I would also say something that I've really been learning and exercising in the last year or so as well is asking about their experiences as opposed to their opinions, because you get very different answers that way. People may just parrot what they're hearing from national news outlets and just repeating what they're hearing and making those their own opinions. But when you ask about their experiences, you really get a different answer, at least a more nuanced answer that helps explain why maybe a subset of this community thinks this way. And it helps you be a better journalist, be a newsroom that really is in touch with the reality. Because I feel like that is a very fair criticism of journalists that aren't in touch with the realities of the regular person. And I think going back to listening will help strengthen in all aspects of that newsroom.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think in our field, we get do these community listening. And then I think, as journalists, it's like, okay, we have the story, we're gone. And you're right, that does feed into distrust. What is your outlook on what's happening across the country?
I would base it off of what I'm hearing from the people on the ground. And also looking back to 2020 protests, it was definitely people fed up. We definitely heard that from folks just frustrated, not knowing what to do, and sometimes just feeling being out there in the streets was something that they felt like they can be in control of. And then, of course, we also heard people who definitely know how to use their emails and phones to call the representatives and taking it to that next level and pressuring policy changes. So it's really a multi-pronged effort from what we can see. It's interesting because we just did a series of stories about, 5 years after the George Floyd protest, what is happening, has there been changes? And a lot of it is about sustaining these efforts. And it's really hard. Like there's, you get people during, the summer of protests, and right away it's the summer for these protests. And I think that's where it comes in. I think the people feel like they're doing their part. They're announcing their frustration. They're calling their representatives. They're letting it be known. And we'll just have to wait and see. And, as journalists, we have to be the ones asking the representatives questions and holding them to account as well. I think that's where we come in. There's ways that we can listen to our community in formats that we create and, events and all of that. But then our community is speaking right now in the streets, and we have to listen to them there too. And then take that, go to representatives and question them about that. So we have a part in sustaining their voices as well, and asking the questions that they can ask the representatives that they voted for as well.
As a Colorado lawmaker, how are you viewing the immigration crisis that's unfolding here in Colorado?
I think what you're seeing is a rollback of human rights and the rule of law in the United States. I know we're looking at it through the lens of immigrants. I think this is the start, and it's going to lead to U.S. citizens being arrested as well. And it has happened. There are quite a few U.S. citizens who have been arrested and detained So what we're seeing is really an erosion of human rights and the rule of law and also civil rights, right? If you are a US citizen and you have not committed any crime, you should not be arrested. So it's a combination of erosion of constitutional rights as well.
And how are you personally standing in the gap for members of the community whose human rights have been violated?
As a lawmaker, there's a lot we can do, and there are also limits to what we can do. Because the great thing about the United States, we have a constitution and we have a constitution like no other. The constitution gives you rights, right? And it also constrains you. And it's the same thing with government agencies and branches of government. As a Colorado legislator, I have a lot of opportunities to do great work in the community to protect people's rights. But at the same time, the same job constrained me as a legislator and also as an attorney. Having some understanding of the law also makes me want to follow the process, makes me want to follow the system to see what comes out of it, even though we know sometimes our systems are not always calibrated properly to protect everyone's rights. So in essence, what I'm saying is that at the state capitol, I pass bills to protect and support community members, but our bills can only go so far because we have a constitution and our constitutions also constrained us because there are separations between the branches. There are federal laws, there are state laws. Sometimes they work in complementarity and sometimes they don't. And sometimes there are limits to what we can do as a state. So that's part of the conversation and a part of the challenge. I want to support my community, but I also want to follow the law. And also I want to follow the Constitution. Because imagine you have a president who's not following the Constitution, and then the good people who want to do the right thing as well is not following it. And what we finding ourselves is in complete chaos and lawlessness and losing or basic rights, human rights, civil rights, and constitutional rights. So I work at the state capitol. I passed a bill this year that protects community members who are US citizens as well, and to protect their information from being given to ICE by the Department of Human Services. That's one of the bills that I passed. So it was in the protection of information at the intersection of immigration. We did that. But even though we did that, a lot of things are happening at the state and at the federal level that I cannot control. As you know, I make the laws, I do not enforce them. That's the difference. I pass this law, and let's say our government agency decide to not enforce the law and not to put the regulation in place. What we can do is I can study it some more, put in a new bill for next year, but I'm not the police. So I cannot enforce the law. So I'm not a law enforcement officer. And our constitution constrained lawmakers as to what lane they need to stay in. So again, I have done the marches. I have talked at different rallies, different events. I do that. I'm preparing for the next legislative sessions. I already have at least one bill ready to protect our immigrants, to ensure they have access to jobs and things like that, or migrant communities. But as I mentioned, I have a lot of opportunities to do a lot of great work because of the people who elected me, but also the Constitution constrained how far I can go.
I see. You make really good points and you are doing fantastic work. When it comes to advice that you would give to your constituents, how can people get involved on the ground level to make a change here in Colorado?
I believe we're a very progressive state, and that's reflected in the type of laws that we've passed. And legislators can only pass those laws based on the mandates that we've been given by the people. We passed an immigration laws in the state of Colorado. The governor put it differently, but I believe it was a law to make sure local law enforcement were not actively stepping in as ICE agents, basically, and protecting kids and protecting people going to the hospital and protecting Colorado's community members. And we can only do that work because our citizens give us that opportunity. The work that I do at the Capitol is not because I'm so bold. It's because my constituents are so bold to elect me to allow me to do that job. So again, I think what I would tell my constituency is to keep being bold, keep electing people who will go to the state capitol, who will do the work, who will stand up for working people, and everyone else in between. And also they need to go out there, support the marches because they can. They need to go to the places that legislators cannot go. Because certainly there are places and conversations that I am not part of because of time constraints. If I'm out there, if I'm at the state capitol legislating, I cannot be marching with my constituents. They have to do that work. And also they have to do the job of educating their neighbors because I can't do everything all at once. So again, this work has to be a partnership and they need to stand up. They need not to give in to the fear mongering and not losing hope. This president's going to be in office for the next 3.5 years. And that's the way our constitution works. And we will be vocal. We will advocate against what he does, the negative things that he does, and the way he's eroding people's rights. And we need our constituency out there to help out as well. What I don't want is that our community members supporting ICE and calling and then do all the wrong things. But I want community members to be supporting each other because we live here in community. At the end of the day, we just have to make sure that we don't give in to the fear mongering as members of the community and neighbors.